Yes. So the Igbo language is a language that's primarily spoken in the southeast region of Nigeria, but there are pockets of Igbo culture in other West African countries. I believe there's a pocket of Igbo speakers in Cameroon, and there's another pocket of Igbo speakers in, I think, Gambia.
This is Chocolate and Coffee Break, a compassionate proposition, a space to share stories, bridge divides, and spark meaningful connections. So grab your chocolate, pour your cuppa, and let's break down barriers, one conversation at a time. And now, here's your host, Andrea Pudding.
And welcome to Chocolate and Coffee Break today. I hope you've got your chocolate and your coffee and you're ready to sit back and hear another heartwarming story. Today, my guest is Udochi Okeke, and she is a storyteller, software developer, and cultural advocate. Udochi is on a mission to preserve and celebrate Indigenous African languages through joyful, high-quality content. And through her work, she hopes to inspire others to invest in their culture, their children, and their voice. And I know we're going to have an amazing conversation with Udochi today. So, welcome, Udochi.
Hi, it's great to see you, Andrea.
It's great to have you here. Now, I'd like to start with a conversation starter from my little conversation starter pack. And I have one for you. I've pulled one out randomly. And what we have is, what do you love about your culture?
Ooh, that's a good question. What do I love about my culture? I think everybody loves their culture, but if I had to pick something about our culture that I love, it's the how colorful it is, how vibrant. There's so many. If you look at the clothing and the festivities that we have, it's very colorful. So I love the beauty of the colors.
Yeah, I appreciate that because I'm a real color lover myself. So it's lovely to have that and to see that vibrancy. And I think the vibrancy echoes into what the culture is about, doesn't it?
Yeah, it definitely does. Like it really shows the different layers that there are in both the the way that the language is spoken, the way that the people interact with each other, the love that they have for nature. It's all there. So yeah, it really shows. And
It
even
does.
like some of the clothing have leaves and stuff like that on them, which is like reflects nature. Um, yeah, it's beautiful. It's lovely.
Yeah. So I'd love you to share a little. Let's look at what you're doing in the world to start with, and you're focusing on bringing an African language into a higher place so that children can identify with themselves. So, can you want to tell us a little bit about that, and we can talk about that?
Absolutely. Yeah. So we are working on a children's cartoon, an animated series where what we do is we do songs, we teach things like the alphabet, things like the numbers, colors, things that all primary school children need to know. But we actually focus on teaching it in the Igbo language. So in a while ago, I think in the early 2000s, UNESCO, which is United Nations educational body, put out a study that said that the Igbo language would be extinct by the year 2050. And
Wow.
yeah, so we, people who are descendants of Igbo speaking people, kind of saw that as a call to action to start creating content and creating things that we would do to put to kind of save the Igbo language essentially. So people started creating content, speaking Igbo online, making websites and doing different types of things like that. Um, And me personally, I decided that I wanted to focus on creating content for children because obviously the children are the future of any community. So I started creating these. I started with puppets initially, and we used puppets to. I kind of had something in mind like Sesame Street, to so we to interact with the children in a theatrical way. Um, and we did that on YouTube for a period of time, and then later on, we met an animator who was willing to do things for a reasonable price, and we started working with an animator to create cartoons for the same children and make them in the Igbo language, and they became a really big hit, and a lot of people really loved them. So yeah, it's been an exciting journey.
Yeah. So the important question here, I think, is where does the Igbo language come from?
Yes. So the Igbo language is a language that's primarily spoken in the southeast region of Nigeria, but there are pockets of Igbo culture in other West African countries. I believe there's a pocket of Igbo speakers in Cameroon, and there's another pocket of Igbo speakers in, I think, Gambia, if I'm not mistaken. There's another country that has Igbo speakers there, so it's not only Southeast Nigeria, but it's spread around. And the Igbo culture is actually one of the many West African nations that a lot of the transatlantic slave trade was heavily focused on. So there are people who speak Igbo or have some vestiges of Igbo culture in like South America and the different places where the slave routes ended up landing. So there's a lot of like that culture and history and heritage in those places as well.
Yeah. So it's really interesting to see that there is so many people in this culture, yet it's a fear that the language is going to die out. That's a really fascinating thing to even think about.
Yeah, and it's interesting and it's weird because I think the reason why there's a lot of people and yet it's a dying language, or it was considered a dying language. I'm not sure if they've re-upped their study yet, but the reason why is because a lot of people have there are not a lot of resources in the Igbo language, or there weren't, and I think there still aren't, because as far as I know, I don't see there aren't that many science textbooks written in Igbo language. There aren't that many programs in Igbo language, even children's programs like the one I'm doing. There are very few that are actually in the Igbo language, and then there are not a lot of technological resources. So if you were going to right now we have large language models in AI, and you don't see them translating the Igbo language, or they do a very poor job at translating the Igbo language. So there are people who are talking about working on those problems, these types of problems where resources and technological resources and scientific resources are not available in those languages. But what if there's anything has been done to do that, like concrete? There's very little that has been done. That's something that results in languages dying. So, and also
Mm.
even in Nigeria where people speak Igbo, the government is not Igbo speaking. The majority of the people who work in the government are generally tend to be of a different community in Nigeria. So um yeah, that's one of the reasons why we don't have the leverage or the I guess authority. I'm not sure what the word is, but it's like power to preserve ourselves in that way. We're kind of
Yeah.
a minority in Nigeria.
Well, why do you think it's so important for children to see themselves, to see this reflection and to have this language?
Good question. I think it's very important for children to see themselves in the media, and I think I think about it like myself. When I was growing up, I watched a lot of um, cartoons. I watched a lot of television. Um, Growing up into a parent of to a child of two working parents. Both of my parents were gainfully employed and worked their whole lives. And when I was younger, I remember watching television and I would get so excited when just to see like a Nigerian. Like I grew up in America, in the United States. And I was always I was a minority. I was like a double minority. Like I'm African American, but I'm also my parents are Nigerian. So we I grew up with being a double minority essentially, and eventually my whenever I was watch TV, I would see if I see a Nigerian on television, I get excited. So that's something that always feels it's good. It's good to feel. It's a good feeling.
Yeah. So it's something that's really valuable for children to see.
Yeah, it's extremely valuable.
Yep. So let's just take a quick break so that I can have a nibble on my chocolate. So take notice of our ads, of those who are sponsoring the show, because that helps to keep our show going. So while I'm having a nibble of my chocolate, and stay tuned.
Career, commitments, calendar that's more packed than your pantry, but something's still missing. In Compassionate Purpose, Andrea Pudding invites you to stop chasing busy and start living with intention. This book is about real fulfillment through small acts of compassion, purpose-driven service, and meaning that last. No pressure, no perfection, just purpose with heart. Compassionate Purpose, Discovering a Life of Fulfillment. Search for Andrea Pudding on Amazon.
How far would you go to keep your loved ones safe when everything else falls apart? In 1945, Ellie and her family risked everything to escape the horrors of war. They fought through frozen landscapes, bombed cities, and an unforgiving world that seemed bent on destroying them. Would you risk your life to keep your family together, even when survival seemed impossible? In the midst of despair, they found the courage to continue. This is their story.
And Silently Falls the Snow, available now on Amazon.
Udochi, I'm fascinated by the fact that you were born in America, so you are an American,
Mhm.
yet working so hard to save this language is so important to us. So what's the background story to that? How are you so connected with this language from Nigeria?
So as I said earlier, like I felt very confident the seeing representations of Nigerian and being growing up in America and seeing a multicultural nation where there are so many different representations of different people and different types of people all over America, and seeing even other Nigerians being represented in America, and even different Igbo people being represented in small ways in America. I I initially just felt a boost of confidence every time I saw a little piece of myself and my parents in those things. But eventually, when I was 13 years old, my father sent me to Nigeria, to a boarding school in Nigeria to study as a boarding school student, and
Wow.
that was really where I got a lot of my exposure from. And I spent 3 years of high school in a village in Nigeria learning with other Igbo children. And I got to see the ins and outs and what they experience and what life is like for them. And it kind of built a bridge in my mind about who I am and where I came from and what that means to me, even all the way across the ocean in America. So, yeah.
That must have been a massive cultural shock, I would think.
Yeah, it was definitely a culture shock. I I definitely wasn't mentally prepared initially. I think I was I'd never seen anything like it when I first went, but I just went because obviously it's my father, and I respect my father and respect his choices. And so when he sent me there, I didn't know what to expect, but I trusted my father, and I just was there. And eventually I grew to love it. Like initially, even though there was a fear and there was a confusion, I made lots of friends, and I was even like sad to leave in the end, after meeting so many different people who at the end of the day just wanted to show love and receive love. And I really found really made a lot of great friends, some of who I still talk to till today.
So, what do you think was your greatest lesson from from being sent to Nigeria as a young teenager? Obviously, maybe they thought that the American culture wasn't good for a teenager. I don't know.
Well, funny enough, I grew up in Washington, D.C., and at that time it was considered the murder capital of the world.
Oh my gosh.
So yes, so I grew up in a very a city full of gangs and things of that nature, and my parents didn't want me to be exposed to that. We spent a lot of time indoors, which is probably why I watch so much TV. And so my parents wanted us to experience where they came from, which they obviously had fond memories of. And um, so I learned a different way of being. And I also learned that like people, I guess the biggest lesson I learned was that like there's not just one way of being. Like um, there's people are shaped by their environment. Because obviously, like the African Americans that I met in Washington D.C., they look the same as the Africans I met in Nigeria, but the behavior is a lot different. So when I came back to America, I just had a different sense of identity, and that's one of the reasons why when I went to college, I eventually studied psychology because that was very fascinating to me.
Yeah. So I'm trying to imagine as a 13-year-old going to being sent overseas and discovering this new world. And did you have the language skills when you went there?
No. I knew very few words. I knew how to say hello. I knew how to say thank you. I knew how to say please. But in terms of like having conversational Igbo, I did not have it at that time. And even till now, as an adult, I struggle, but am still committed to becoming fluent or trying to learn as much as I can. Um, so I still take lessons till now. But I know that, like, and that's why it's important to work with children because children actually have this thing I learned in my psychology classes that when children can speak any language, a baby has the ability to hear any language at all. But then when he gets to the age of, I think, 7 or so, that there is, they start, your brain starts to trim all those excess neurons that have that have the access to all those other languages, and really focus on the language that you're more dominant in, or the language that you express with the most. So yeah.
Yeah. And as an adult trying to learn another language, it can be really, really challenging.
Oh, it is.
Yeah,
It
I
is.
tried to learn Estonian.
Ooh.
So Estonian is considered, apart from Asian languages, the hardest one for English speakers to learn.
Oh,
And my
really?
brain just
Wow.
could not it said no. It was too hard at the time.
Yeah, it can be challenging. Especially like you said, there is that the I think the United Nations or somebody created a map that showed which languages were easier to learn, and like Spanish, French, because they're closer to English, but then there are languages farther away like Chinese and Estonian clearly, that are more difficult for us to learn. And I think Igbo was probably, if Igbo was on that scale, it'd probably be closer to Estonian because it's pretty difficult to learn. But I think that's one of the reasons why it's important to preserve it, because once people are no longer speaking it, it'll be really hard to acquire it later.
Yeah. And do you feel that the culture and the language really together pull in to help develop something meaningful to children?
Yeah, I think the culture and the language are extremely important because the language is very focused on nature, and the culture, I'm sorry, the culture is very focused on nature, and culture and language play go hand in hand. You know, the way a culture is determines the way a language is, and vice versa. So they speak a lot about nature, they speak a lot about the spirituality and things of that nature. So it's a very powerful language that has a lot of information about their environment and stuff like that in it. So I think it's important to preserve.
Yeah. So now I'm just going to get my cup refilled so that while we have a quick break and while we are, don't forget to subscribe, like, or comment on the show. And while you're watching the sponsors, please take note.
Hello, I'm Annie Burke, Cosmic Heart Intuitive. I'm the animal human relationship enricher. I help animal parents connect with their animals, living or in spirit, through telepathic conversations. And you too can learn how to connect with your animal telepathically with my mentorship program. It's just amazing what you can learn from your animals about their past lives, their current life, and their future lives. It will change your life, it will change their life.
You've ticked the boxes: career, commitments, calendar that's more packed than your pantry, but something's still missing. In Compassionate Purpose, Andrea Putting invites you to stop chasing busy and start living with intention. This book is about real fulfillment through small acts of compassion, purpose-driven service, and meaning that last. No pressure, no perfection, just purpose with heart. Compassionate Purpose, Discovering a Life of Fulfillment. Search for Andrea Putting on Amazon.
So, Udochi, I really want to have a conversation about when you came home from Nigeria and you went to college, because I think you learnt so much more than just your classes at college. So, can you share with me a little bit about that experience?
Yeah, so when I went to college, I was in I actually went to a dormitory that was special interest, and it was for people who were international students. It was called International House, and everybody was from a different country. There were people from Japan, Bosnia, Croatia, Egypt, so many different places, Nepal, and I loved the experience. I personally wasn't necessarily considered an international student because I was born and raised in America, even though I had that experience outside of America. But I chose to do it. I just chose to do it because I guess I felt more at home there and with people of the world. And when I got there and I met all these people, it really gave me a little bit more deeper insight into what um what it means to be, I guess, a citizen of the world, essentially. Um, so I seeing people of different cultures and seeing them come straight from their countries and expressing themselves in these unique and beautiful ways kind of gave me an understanding of myself a little bit more, in the sense that they are, their cultures are beautiful, and they're holding on to they have something that identifies them as unique and creative and beautiful, and it doesn't take away anything from them. So it made me want to get deeper into my own culture because I was seeing so many cultures around me, and that made me really start digging deeper into things that maybe I wasn't really digging as deep into before. For example, learning my language, learning my parents' native language, and things of that nature. And eventually that would, snowball into me starting this organization to create content for children in Igbo language.
I think it would be a wonderful experience to be surrounded by those different cultures, and I'm assuming that then they'd bring in their foods and their music, and it would be so rich to have that experience.
Yeah, that was one of the best things. We had this thing called the I House was International House dinners, and that was an opportunity for everybody from every culture to cook something. We had our own kitchen, which was not every dorm had their own kitchen, but we had our own very full size kitchen, and we would all cook something from our own culture and share it with everybody else. And it was one of the most amazing things that I had ever experienced. So that was that, and be going to Nigeria were like my top two life experiences, other than the few times I've traveled and stuff like that. But it was very beautiful and very it shaped me.
What do you think's the biggest learning that you had from being surrounded by so many cultures about the world and creating a better place?
Well, you know what? What's interesting is that when I was in college, that was actually during 9/11, if you can remember it. And
Yeah.
it was interesting because there were people there. There were Muslims that lived on the dormitory with us, and there were all these other people from other cultures and stuff like that. And there were people from Oman, and there were people from Yemen, and there were people from different places in the Middle East. And so the tension in America was very high during that period of time, but we really bonded around the people that lived with us because we realized that they're just, regular people like us. And even though there were people discriminating against these people from other cultures during that period of time, it was a very tense period in American history because it was a terrorist attack. But we stayed together and we stayed strong with each other, and we realized that, like, we're all just people, and these people came here to get their education just like the rest of us. So we just stayed connected and close to them and gave them the support that they needed. So yeah.
Yeah, I think there's important lessons in there for all of us about the beauty of other cultures, because while we can look at it and go, well, do we need to bring in things from the past? Shouldn't we just be looking at the future? But there's so many rich lessons for us to learn, not just from our own cultures, but from the cultures of others, that it's really that we can carry through to the future, and we can learn once we get come together, we can learn those things together and
Yeah,
explore and help. Does it help you understand people more
it does.
now?
It helps me understand just the average person a lot more. And one of the things that I feel like comes straight from, for example, a lot of cultures in a lot of places, other places in the world believe a lot in. There's like an indigenous belief system that has a lot to do with nature and loving the earth and things of that nature that are very beautiful, that are something that are to be cherished. And I think that if we understand that aspect of things, like if we look into what these people believe in terms of about the earth and how beautiful it is and how we should, and we think a little bit differently about our relationship with where we live, which is the earth itself. I think that would really help us to preserve what we have, and also loving one another and being in community with one another. These are things that I think some cultures that we may call primitive, like, got right, that maybe we need to reconsider for ourselves in the more developed world.
Yeah, I think it makes us more respectful of everyone, of each person, of each culture, and that helps us to learn about ourselves and develop who we are. I think it's just such an important thing to immerse ourselves in cultural experiences.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that.
Yeah. So, Udochi, if you had unlimited resources tomorrow, what would you build?
What would I build?
What would you do if you had unlimited resources?
If I had unlimited resources, I would continue what I'm doing now. I think I'm doing what I love, and I would continue making these children shows for Igbo children.
Thank you, Udochi, and we'll add a link to what you're doing in our show
Thank you
notes.
so much. It's a
Yeah.
pleasure.
So, thank you for joining some chocolate and coffee breaks. Have your own chocolate and coffee break. Invite someone different to you to share in the experience of chocolate and coffee break. And don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment. And send us a photo of you sharing a chocolate and coffee break for our Facebook group. We'll see you next time on Chocolate and Coffee Breaks.